Welcome to Life Expansion After 50 podcast. This podcast series has been running on major platforms, and I'm excited to update my broadcasting to include LinkedIn as a core platform. You can still find it on platforms like Substack, YouTube, Google, Apple, and Spotify. Now, if I like the way this works out, the episodes will also be available in my events section as raw recordings. In addition, you'll be able to tune in live. The plan is for Thursday mornings, but the exact time is still being considered. You can also add comments and questions under the recent episodes, which I can then answer in subsequent broadcasts. The early episodes of the podcast were about life expectancy and then progressed to topics like limiting beliefs, cognitive biases, things that don't serve us, habit patterns, and even our self-talk and the language that we use. Today, in episode 50, I'm introducing the podcast to the LinkedIn audience. If it works out, I'll consider bringing guests to the events. In the interim, I'll discuss the 7 fitness areas and how it applies, and that's my framework that provides a roadmap to make the shift from have, do, be to be, do, have, and concurrently put the conscious mind in charge over the unconscious. To set up and position the show, I'll cover 3 points today. Why it's likely that a 50-year-old today will live longer than they might think, how neuroplasticity and epigenetics offer options to improve our quality of life, and finally, how purpose and self-actualization can help you design a life that you'll love living. Now first, for 50-year-olds today, life expectancy, at least in the U.S., is understated. Insurance tables don't reset with age. As a result, your stated life expectancy is actually lower than it would be given the fact that you've survived at least until 50. Now look around at how many people are living well past their mid-70s. In the U.S., there's politicians that are still running for office well into their 80s. This is important because at 50 years old, a person who lives past 90 has more than half their adult life ahead of them. We also know that most people's lives are run by habit, as much as 95%. Heuristics, or mental shortcuts like cognitive biases and priming, create a situation where people are running the same patterns over and over and over as they condition themselves with the same associations. And that takes me to what each person can do about it. It would be wise for a 50-year-old person to lean into taking care of their health. Do things on purpose to build up muscle mass and bone density. The short version is resistance training. And keep their mind sharp by being active and trying new things. But also take the time to learn about neuroplasticity and deep practice so they don't repeat the last 30 years for the next 30 to 40. While there's no fountain of youth per se, there is evidence that a person can alter their internal environment. A person's internal environment is actually the external environment of their cells. And since cells, like humans, adapt to their environment, we can influence gene expression. Changing how the 20,000 genes express is why we have epigenetics. Epigenetics is said to be why occurrences like spontaneous remission occur and why placebos sometimes work better than even the actual drug. It's also why the opposite of a placebo works, a nocebo. In other words, if a person believes they're sick or will become sick, they can create that gene expression and experience the sickness. One could argue this is why there's a history of spells working on some people. If there's enough belief, the signals from the mind to the brain can create that chemical cocktail through gene expression that helps you or hurts you. And we know that people who are living under stress for prolonged periods have adverse health impacts. We also know that when our cells are in protective mode, for example, moving away from toxins in the body, they cannot at the same time go after nutrients. The nutrient-seeking configuration is different from the protection configuration, and both don't coexist. Now, much the same way a person in an extreme stress response, protection mode, can't access resourcefulness. In other words, anything you do to reduce the frequency, duration, and intensity of stress responses should be good for your health. If you look at the facts that neuroscientists agree on, you can see how so many people by age 50 have willingly trapped themselves into a matrix-type existence. They feel they're unable to break out of it, and it has to do in part with the stubbornness of habits and limiting beliefs. The breakthrough happens when one changes the focus from breaking habits to putting the conscious mind in charge of the unconscious. When the conscious mind is in charge and you understand how neuroplasticity works, you can update your past conditioning to align with today's world, and as you gain experience, you can change habits quickly simply by becoming aware of a limiting belief or habitual thought pattern that doesn't serve you. The next area I want to talk about is purpose. This is about having something that's bigger than yourself. For younger people, you may start with an interim life vision, as it can be hard to think about purpose while trying to raise a young family or whatever they're going through at that time. We've all heard the narrative that a person on their deathbed doesn't care about the work that they did. They wish they had spent more time on relationships. When you dig a little deeper, other things emerge like the will to meaning and human needs. One version says there are 6 important human needs: certainty, variety, connection, significance, growth, and contribution. When taken along with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which says we can't rise to the higher needs until the lower needs are met, we have physiological needs first, food and shelter. Then we have safety. And imagine finding yourself on a deserted island. You would find a source of food and water and find shelter from the elements. Then you would work on ensuring your safety. The next need is love and belonging. When we express love, oxytocin is released. Oxytocin is thought of as the love neurotransmitter. In other words, you have control over loving yourself and loving others, and through that action, you can meet your love need. So the third need is in your control as well. The next need is esteem, which includes respect, recognition, strength, and freedom, for example. Now, each of us can set our own rules for what it means to be respected or recognized and free. Absent that, the rules we have for those were likely to be formed by our environment during ages 0 to 7. The final need is self-actualization, which is the desire to become the most that we can be. What I'm saying is you can begin working on self-actualization by making the conscious decision to do so. Using first principle thinking, you can take elements to their most basic form, tune into what we know is true, and build to a conclusion based on principles. For example, when you look at the 6 human needs, the first 4 needs create 2 sets of continuums. If you're not paying attention, you can bounce back and forth between chasing significance to the point where you feel alone, and then chasing connection until you're so connected you feel insignificant. Similarly, you can chase certainty until you're completely bored, and then chase variety until you have so much variety you feel anxious or insecure. With a well thought out plan and structure, you can probably make that work for you. However, in today's world, with artificial intelligence, AI fakes, and ad copy being constantly updated by algorithms to tap into and leverage our existing cognitive biases, it's going to be a challenge. In the days before the internet, advertisers were able to consistently get people to do what they wouldn't have done on their own. And that was without hyper-targeting and AI writing and updating copy and creating videos. So I wouldn't put my faith in resisting these forces. What you can do is focus on purpose, which ties into self-actualization. You can take it a step further by identifying your top passion. Now, don't confuse passion and purpose. Purpose has enough power to get you through the lean times. It can be the fuel when there isn't much else. On the other hand, passion can get you to scale higher heights. So I advocate using the two together. That way, you can create a vision for yourself that will work now and in the future. And this leads me to the last 2 needs of the 6, growth and contribution. By selecting a purpose that's outside your comfort zone, by definition, you have to have some personal growth to step into that. The other thing about true purpose, when you're listening to your heart, is that purpose involves serving other people. Now, you have both growth and contribution. Humans naturally want to express themselves fully, and life wants to express itself through humans. So there's a natural synergy that works with this contribution. The more you grow, the more you can contribute, and the more you contribute, the more you need to grow to scale your capabilities and offers, or however you're delivering on your purpose. When I bring up this idea to people who are already past 60, many of them have no interest in it at all. I think one reason is that purpose sounds too much like work. However, I think the other reason is that a person who is 60 years old has likely tried and failed numerous times to break habits, overcome limiting beliefs, and break the habit of being who they are, and quite frankly, they're done with it. I assure you, pursuing purpose, especially when you cloak it with some passion, is not like work at all. In fact, you're meeting the 6 human needs, because pursuing growth and contribution together naturally creates certainty, they create variety, it creates significance, and it creates connection in the right amounts. Now, I also assure you that neuroplasticity works for a 60-year-old just as easily as it works for a 40-year-old, and hence using 50 years old as a benchmark. In fact, in the experiment where they saw the DNA telomeres lengthen, which is a function that is consistent with being younger, those subjects in the test, they were in their 70s, and in a week began taking on attributes of someone 20 years younger. I walked through this approach to make the case that regardless of how old you are, you can begin now to design the life you'll love living. You can change your patterns to live into that life, and you can break through your limiting beliefs. This is what Life Expansion After 50 podcast is about. In this episode, I explored the importance of looking at the big picture and then put that in the context of a 50-year-old likely having half of their adult life ahead of them, and connected that to the importance of doing things on purpose so you can make the next 40 years high-quality years. I introduced neuroplasticity and epigenetics as capabilities that we can use to shape how we live our lives and how we can change habits that don't serve us. I then presented purpose and self-actualization as the pathway to finding the context, energy, and desire to take the next steps forward, designing and living a life that you'll love living. In future episodes, I'll alternate between removing resistance factors, those habit patterns that keep us stuck, and creating empowerment catalysts, which can be creating new habits or new frames so that our habits serve us, with the ultimate goal being to put the conscious mind in charge. You can find the first 49 episodes on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to continuing this journey together. Until then, take care.